Everybody, welcome to Sql Managed Instance presentation about the future of flexible cloud-based data center. Welcome to Data Platform Virtual Summit 22. My name is Niko, and together with me we have Uros. Welcome to our session. My name is Niko Neugebauer. I'm a senior product manager at Asia SQL Product Group here at Microsoft. I help to shape and design the product, but I describe myself as just another IT data professional who happened to enjoy way too much Microsoft Data Platform. So after many years of working with it, I moved to and joined the team. You can connect with me on the links that are visible on the screen.
Hi everyone. My name is Uros, and for the past year or so, I've also been part of the Azure SQL product group at Microsoft. I have had extensive experience doing all sorts of data architecture, so the natural next step for me was to go and start shaping the products together with Niko. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn on the link provided below.
All right. With that, let's take a look at our agenda today. First, we are going to take you on a ride on answering the question why SQL Managed Instance was created at all, what it served for. We'll take a look on the SQL Managed Instance in a nutshell to understand what it is, how it can serve you, the customer, the best. Answer on the next question is in the third question. How do we make it happen? How it was designed, how it takes place. Next, we'll focus on what does flexible mean, and what it means to you is the last section of our presentation. With that introduction, I think we're ready to jump in. Uros, let's go.
Why have we created SQL Managed Instance? Well, we're all aware of the explosion of the cloud growth. And, that has been the case for last approximately 10 years. And we've all been witness to operations getting much cheaper, of course, due to economies of scale. So, when we were thinking about how can we make our customers cloud native residents and allow you to move your in-house data centers, all of the servers that you currently own on your premises, and make it easier for you to manage. This is how Managed Instance came about. So what it allows you to do is lift and shift your SQL Server instance to SQL Managed Instance. What is beautiful about it is its compatibility with the SQL Server, and the complete isolation of the customer instances is completely supported with VNets. And all of that comes with a lower total cost of ownership, and as well a platform as a service. We'll go more into what platform as a service is in the next section.
Let's talk about the IaaS, PaaS, and where the SQL Managed Instance is located. Before that, we need to understand a couple of things. So databases by themselves can be based on different models. Some of them are relational, like the managed instance. Some of them are non-relational. Some of the examples you can see on your screens: graph, key pair, columnar, document, etc. And some databases can also be based on the object, such as objects themselves, classes, methods, etc. So there are also two basic common database workload types, and I say basic because there are much more. There are even the hybrid ones, but we have the operational, which is largely transactional, meaning that we have a big number of smaller transactions, such as, a website. This operational workload is sometimes called OLTP, Online Transactional Processing. From the other side, the other major workload type is analytical, is when you support the decision-making tasks. In these cases, typically the transactions are bigger and longer. Some of them can take hours or even days to process very big amounts of data. So Azure SQL Managed Instance is based on Microsoft SQL Server, and as you should know, Microsoft SQL Server supports different models. It is based on the relational, but it supports non-relational models as well. Not all, but enough of them. And Azure SQL Managed Instance, as well as the SQL Server, supports OLTP as well as OAuth processing, which means transactional and analytical processing. So what is the SQL Managed Instance? It's a relational multi-purpose database. It's a public cloud platform as a service database offering that offers the maximum compatibility with SQL Server. It contains some amazing PaaS offering integration and a huge flexibility of the management. It's secure by its design by the virtue of the fully isolated virtual networks and deep integration with the blob storage, Azure Key Vault, and other services. So we have a very important brand. We at Microsoft have something that is called Azure SQL. Azure SQL contains a number of different cloud offerings. First is Azure SQL virtual machines. They are described as an infrastructure as a service. They're best for lift and shift and maybe some workloads where the customer needs to tune and configure every single little detail and maybe some exceptional things when the customer is fully in the control. On the platform as a service, we have two major offerings. The good, amazing, brilliant Azure SQL database, which comes in three different flavors. The classical one, as I call it, or pre-provisioned, when it runs continuously. We also have the Azure SQL database on the serverless compute. Serverless means you can define some limits and you will be scaled up and down or even suspended, pause, on the base of different criteria. There is also the latest and the greatest addition to the Azure SQL family is the hyperscale architecture, which besides, absolutely brilliant, amazing implementation, it also provides a unique opportunity for a PaaS, giving you up to 100 terabytes per single database. But we're not talking about Azure SQL VMs or Azure SQL Database. We're talking about the Azure SQL Managed Instance. It is best when customer decides to modernize their existing application with highest or maximum compatibility with the SQL Server. And that's the kind of like where the SQL Managed Instance is positioned between all our other offers. So let's talk a little bit about the service tiers. Currently, as of today of 2022, we have two of them. First is called general purpose. We believe that the most business workloads will benefit from this service tier. They should start considering using this tier by default. What is the kind of offer general purpose? It offers you a one replica up to 16 terabytes of storage with some IOPS depending on different scaling or let's say flexibility criteria. It contains a built-in HA with a remote storage. And you may ask, whoa, 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 whoa. So that's one replica and remote storage and built-in HA. How does it work? I'll tell you. No problem at all. So it works like that. If you think about the SQL Server on VMs or on premises, you surely know what SQL Server failover cluster means. It means that you have one replica and you have a standby replica. Should you patch or should it go down, the other replica will go up and take over the workload. and the storage is shared. So that's precisely the general purpose architecture. We have the one primary replica, we have the remote storage, and hidden from the customer, but there is a remote standby pool. Should we patch your primary replica, the cost, the impact to the customer will be just a failover because one of the standby replicas from this pool will be taken, placed into your workload, attached to remote storage, and you will carry on. The second service tier we've got is called business critical. This one is for the workloads that require, and I will say, the lowest latency, the fastest recovery, and a readable secondary. You will get not one, not two, not three, but four different replicas joined together within a fully synchronous availability group with 16 terabytes of storage currently in preview, and maybe if you're watching this recording, maybe it's already in general availability. The local storage is really local. It's not like any other service which uses still a remote disk. This storage is really locally attached to the on the hardware level. So you can get absolutely amazing, non-comparable IOPS and the latency when you work with this service tier. Of course, you can place the such things as in-memory and other services. We've got the hardware options. We've got right now the standard tier, which uses Intel Broadwell CPUs and supports up to 5.1 gigabytes of RAM per CPU vCore. We already have in the general availability the premium series, which contains the 7 gigabytes of RAM per CPU vCore, and it contains the wonderful, absolutely, mind-blowing fast Intel Ice Lake CPUs. In public preview, the premium series memory optimized, which contains a whopping 13.6 gigabytes of RAM per CPU vCore, and you can have the flexibility of choosing the service tier and the amount of memory that suits your workload the best. So yes, as a platform as a service or PaaS or PaaS offering, there are limits for the memory, for the max log size, for the IO throughput and latency, size of TempDB, a lot of things, but we give you the flexibility, and I'll give you an example. We give totally for free a very fast locally attached SSD on the general purpose service tier for your TempDB, because of course you do not want to place your beating heart of your workloads, the temporary database, somewhere remote. You want it to place as close as you wish. So we give 24 gigabytes per CPU vCore. Should you need more space for your temporary database, you can have it by increasing the number of CPU vCores. Might not be what every customer do, but it gives not a fixed offer, but a flexibility. When you modernize a SQL Server application on Azure to managed instance, you get these advantages, like always operate on the latest and greatest version of the SQL Server. It's basically the last ever upgrade you ever do. You remember those fine upgrades where you spent 6 months or maybe a year planning, and then something happens, it gets delayed. You do not have this. There is no option. Your managed instance is kept up to date, and it's not the latest in-market available version. It is a little bit ahead of it because all the new features are primarily landing on our service, on Azure SQL PaaS. We provide you with the maximum SQL Server compatibility for low-cost application migration and modernization. You can have your resource governor, SQL agent, you name it. We'll see them, some of them listed in the next slides. You get a fully managed and optimized service for DBA productivity. Will allow you to focus on what you know the best, on configuring, on tuning, on developing, on integrating with other services. We'll take care of the high availability. We'll take care of the managed aspect, such as the backups. You do not have to worry. Full isolation and security, I will be repeating it over the presentation. Evergreen version, as I mentioned, perpetual upgrades. Every time we patch it, your managed instance, and you can define when we patch it with the help of the maintenance window, we keep you beyond the latest and the greatest SQL Server box version. Also, Managed Instance has the incredible integration with other services like Azure Key Vault. You can also use the managed identities when you are accessing other services like a blob storage, so you can configure a granular permissions when integrating with them. All of these amazing things such as automated tick provisioning, industry-leading high availability, 4 nines, which are financially backed up. You can have a premium support by the SQL Server engineering team 24 hours per day, 7 days per week. We allow you with a couple of clicks configure geo-replicated automatic backups. You can set up an auto failover groups with any regions in Azure, etc., etc., etc. Built-in compliance, advanced threat protection. I mean, you name it. Monitoring at scale is also in other important aspects. So what is the flexibility? What is the proximity with the SQL Server that you are mentioning? Here are some of the examples. If you have developed a custom code and you use a CLR, the only PaaS service that will provide you with CLR support is SQL Managed Instance. If you want to keep your current architecture and you're using inter-database queries, trace flags, resource governor, instance time zone selection, distributed partition views, Windows authentication, database mail, we are the only PaaS service that will give it to you. If you are using Service Broker, even the hybrid Service Broker, which exchanges the messages between the SQL Server running on premises or on SQL VMs and managed instance, you got it. You want an easy migration? We got the log replay service. We support backup restore, and we have an amazing feature, which is called link feature for SQL MI. You want to use a modern data warehouse architecture with Azure Data Lake storage or blob storage? Use ATLS virtualization. You want the transparency with your environment? Be my guest. Use the extended events, use the SQL audit, create notification, even use the profiler, which you actually, in my point of view, you shouldn't, but we still support you. If you want to extract a backup, we do allow you that, the full backup. And if you want the integration, I'm going over and over again over this, we do support it. And we are the first, together with other PaaS services like Azure SQL Database, we are the first services to get those integrations. If you want to enhance your performance with Resource Governor, you want to tweak your files and file groups, you got it. Multi-platform interaction, Service Broker, distributed transaction, linked servers. And if you're running a data science workload and you're doing some AI, we got you covered. Machine learning services. You do not have to do the costly ETL processes. Like on SQL Server, you can use Python and R or R, these two wonderful languages, to extract the valuable insight in your data. So we've got the lowest barrier of entry with a high outcome. It's basically the same SQL Server instance, but you can focus on what you know the best. You can focus on your business. It's we do expect that none or almost none application changes will be needed. Of course, it's a kind of it depends on your point of view, but we have collected statistics and over 90 databases were compatible. Backup is fully automated. High availability is fully automated. SLA is included. We provide with the synchronous read replica and business critical service tier out of the box. You do not have to go and set it up. It's there right from the provisioning. You can implement the DR scenario with just a couple of clicks on Azure portal. So let's take a look at SQL MI in details. The flexibility of deployment gives you opportunity to choose a region. So you do not have to go, write a contract, find a data center where you want to provision, all of these things. You go on Azure, you select the region, you have the flexibility of 2 service tiers. You have those 3 amazing hardware options we've got. We allow you to select from 4 to 80 CPU vCores, and you can select from 32 gigabytes up to amazing 16 terabytes per instance. You can connect within the virtual private network with a private IP, or if you set up the network security group on Azure, which we basically beg you to do, you can even open the public endpoint. But please be careful. We want your data to be secure. You can configure outside of the SQL to do the changes in Azure Portal in with CLI or PowerShell. You can change all these things. You can change the maintenance windows if something is something change in your business requirements. There are some different things. Of course, we provide you the surface of the SQL server, but we do not provide you access to the underlying operating system because you want the service that is platform as a service. So architecture, here's just a picture. You can see that we care so much about security. We give you a dedicated virtual cluster. You can see here you get a primary node, just a primary node on general purpose, and on business critical you'll get 4 nodes, 1 primary and 3 secondary. 2 of them totally invisible, and the 4th one is a readable replica. You can see that you can connect through the TDS endpoint, through the private IP, through the internal load balancer. Then you get into the gateways, and then you will go into the SQL engine that runs in the node together with some management node agent, which picks up the health of the instance, reports if there is a need for a failover, and helps us with maintenance and patching. You can also see the public IP connection should you enable this one, which is implemented with another external to the node load balancer. We have a lot of the details. I mean, there is not enough time to go through them all. So for example, on business critical service tier, you get this the storage locally inside the node. But if you're running a general purpose service tier, your storage will be a remote storage. Remote, but which is not accessible to any other service under any circumstances. So we provide you the flexibility also with the instance pools, which are currently in the public preview. So the smallest, smallest instance we give you is 4 CPU vCores, but you can also have a smaller one, a 2 CPU vCore instance, if you provide and configure the instance pools which are in preview. We give you the huge flexibility with the hybrid scenarios, and that allows the true interconnection, the true meaning of the hybrid offering. Hybrid doesn't mean that only between on-premises and Azure, our cloud. you can have the hybrid offering between any other cloud and our cloud, together with managed instance. And you can have the true scenarios of distributed computation. For example, with link feature, you can expand it not only for replicating the data, not only for the migration, but you can use it as a readable replica. You can run your workload on your data center, and if there is a need, you can spin up a managed instance in one of those 50 regions, establish a link feature between your server and the managed instance, and use managed instance as a readable replica. As I mentioned, the service broker allows you a scenario when you can run this asynchronous message exchange between SQL Server on our Azure SQL VM and managed instance, or maybe between on-premises or SQL Server, the full SQL Server that supports its service broker running anywhere together with managed instance. With linked servers, you can communicate with other Microsoft Data Platform offers. Ask, which Microsoft Data Platform offers? Well, I'll give you two examples. For example, Azure SQL Database. So you do not have to run a costly and complex ETL processing, but you can use the linked servers like you are used to do on premises to transfer the data from and to, right? Or you can use the linked server from managed instance to connect to Azure's Synapse serverless analytics and use Synapse to do a heavy lifting on huge amounts of data, maybe which you can import with ADLS virtualization into your managed instance, and thus leverage the power of SMP to serve the data while using the power of MPP, the Synapse Analytics, to process the huge amounts of data. Amazing scenario. Distributed transactions. You can run the distributed transactions with complex patterns between the SQL Server running anywhere and managed instance. Also, right now, we have the private preview for MSDTC. Yes, that's Distributed Transaction Coordinator on Azure already in private preview. And last but not least, you can use the transaction replication not to deliver, to replicate the data to past service, but also from. So you can set up a transactional replication from managed instance to other services that will be able to support that respective protocol. The hybrid flexibility with Windows authentication. I mean, who could think that you can discover and use the Windows authentication, because by sending the encrypted Kerberos ticket and previously syncing the Active Directory into the Kerberos realm of the Azure AD, the managed instance will recognize the format, will check if this encrypted Kerberos ticket is valid, will return Azure AD token, and will authenticate the user only on managed instance. Only on managed instance can you have the hybrid flexibility with the link feature for SQL MI. As I explained, you can run it on premises, other clouds, anywhere, and you can replicate the data to Azure SQL MI, and then you can use for ETL processes, maybe with Azure Data Factory. Maybe you'll use it for reading analytics. Maybe you want to extract this data into Synapse. Maybe you will use it as a readable replica. Amazing feature, gives you amazing flexibility. Another one is the ADLS virtualization. You can store your data in CSV, Parquet, or JSON formats on blob storage or Azure Data Lake Storage Generation 2, and you can use the read processes to read this data and integrate within the managed instance. That's about it. Uros, over to you.
What does really flexible mean? So let's look at two different scenarios about flexibility is going to give us a great introduction and overview about when we can benefit from flexibility. So it's January 2019. It's business, growing. CapEx increases are planned. You want to buy more servers. You go through the entire procurement process. You order them. Estimated arrival date, let's say, is mid 2019. By July 15th, you have everything installed. The tech department is, very, very happy. New applications are being built. You can handle the increase in demand. Everything is awesome for 4 months, 5 months. And come January 2020, global pandemic starts and everybody is on hold with, well, just about everything, and especially with purchases. So what are you faced with? You have two options. You can sell the hardware or keep the hardware. If you choose to sell the hardware, how much can you sell it for? How long will it take to sell it? Is it even possible to sell it? What are the costs that are involved in the selling process itself? And then if you keep the hardware, business profitability is going to be, well, obviously negative because you will have a lot of underutilized hardware that you probably won't have anything to do with. So what we learned from this is, once you buy hardware, it's really, really, really hard to scale back. And then the business profitability becomes significantly impacted. Whereas if you were on the clouds, the scalability is really something that helps your business because you don't have to worry about business booms and business disruptions at all. You can just release the hardware. So let's look at the second case. What happens in an unplanned business boom? It's again January 2020. You're having business as usual, selling protective masks online. There's a couple of hospitals that are purchasing from you. There's really nothing major that's been happening in the last 20 years where your business couldn't, your databases couldn't handle the business. You just plan to replace the machines that you already have and no increases. But then come March 2020 and your business demands are through the roof. The databases cannot handle the load, the applications are crashing, and you have a huge profit loss due to inability to meet the increased demand. And all of that happens because hardware is practically impossible to find in a situation. You might be able to buy it off from someone who's really trying to sell it, but then there's going to be again, is it going to be the types that you want? Can you connect it in your current data center? There's a lot of procurement issues if you're buying used hardware, mostly security wise. So the questions are, how long will it take? How is it even possible to buy it? Because, the chip industry wasn't doing so great because everybody was sick and not producing hardware. So again, what are the learnings that we have from here is you can't scale up. Business profitability, again, is negative due to the missed revenues that could have been, in your pocket and your shareholders' pockets. And you also realize again that cloud scalability is the only real solution because all you need to do to provision more resources is go to the portal and click, click, click. Now you have more machines provisioned. You can choose between hardware types if you wanted more performance, less performance, depending really on your business needs. What's beautiful about SQL Managed Instance is that you have 3 different hardware series. And you obviously have the general purpose standard hardware where if you need, let's say, more memory or more performance depending on your applications, you can choose whichever hardware you want. You can change it. You can go and run a test and see if when you add more standard series, does it perform better, or do you just want to go to the more memory optimized or more performance optimized, depending what kind of application you're building. The amazing part about being able to switch so easily is that you can specify the cost and you can focus on momentum, and that's tailoring at the applications and making sure that they work really well. You don't have to bother with choosing the hardware and then returning it if it doesn't work for you, and going through all this um, mumbo jumbo of doing the tests, which becomes really really hard when you want to do it at scale, to handle, see if you can handle a lot of loads, which you can very very easily do with SQL Managed Instance. So in the context of BCDR, let's talk about a geo distribution if you had to set it up on-prem, basically at the moment as the data centers are. So to do that, you would need to, find two data centers within the region, find providers, contractors, make sure that the contracts are written, signed, make sure that, you can actually establish a fast, secure channel with equivalent VMs on both sides. You need to set up data replication between the two VMs, and then make sure at that everything really is replicated, because if you have a failover and you need to log into the secondary data center, and if Active Directory is just not there, there is absolutely no point in doing it. But then you have to be sure that the data center provider is really what is secure, because if Active Directory is breached into and copied from the secondary data center, then your application is pretty much pretty much busted, or big risk. And then, of course, you need to set up the auto failovers. So this doesn't really seem easy to use, does it? You have to reserve the hardware and go through all these equivalency safety checks. Versus in the cloud, and what you can do with managed instances is just get a credit card, put it in, and you can instantly have all of these features. Especially, you will have a problem to do this if you go to data center now, and smaller data centers, and you ask them, oh, can we have X amount of things here? What happens is, because we have delays of 3 to 6 months, we have a big problem, and you would have to have a big problem in setting up disaster recovery. So how does that really look like with managed instance? You can basically, in a few clicks, you can be global. The whole process, if you go through the portal, takes about 30 clicks, give or take. And the big steps that you have to do are creating primary managed instance, very simple. Create a secondary managed instance, also very simple. Create a global virtual peering, just establishing a virtual network, and then creating a failover group, which is all basically on one screen, where you will select your primary and secondary instance, and the peering will be established. Or you can do it even easier if you use CLI and PowerShell. You can just do it in basically about 2 clicks. Go to the portal, copy the script, and paste it into your CLI or PowerShell, and it's going to be done pretty much for you. This brings us to another topic that I want to talk about, and that is the ease of operations. So the beautiful part about cloud is the support that you get basically for free, and a big part of this is you don't need internally built tools to manage your managed instances. If you have many of them, you can use Terraform, which again you can use to PowerShell or CLI, whatever you're more comfortable with. And then, of course, you always have the portal itself, where you have all of your machines and everything with the advanced statistics about how they're used, about billing, and all sorts of metrics that you would be interested to know without ever having to build this, um, which is side infrastructure about it. And if you're, let's say, coming from Amazon, you can just swap things because you can swap CLI commands in your scripts and just execute them. And it makes it much easier. The switch over process, if you were to do one, makes it becomes a lot easier. So, how does it really impact you? Um, we split this section in a couple of subsections because we believe that each one of you has a different motivation as to why you're doing certain things, and then let's focus on why and how managed instance in the cloud matter to the CTO slash CEO. So as we've explored previously, we know that capex slash opex is much lower, and this comes from the fact that you don't have to overbuy or underbuy and then worry about having a tangible impact on your business, because if come Black Friday, you don't have to worry about it. Do we have sufficient capacity? You can just pre-provision for that day or two or three or five, 20, 30, 50 machines, pay for them only for those 3 days, and just release them when you don't need them anymore. This then feeds into ease of planning. If you have brain space and mind space to be thinking about, or not having to think about your spikes, are you going to catch all the profits, and what are the shareholders going to ask you, and see what are you going to say about it in the shareholder meeting. You can focus on business strategy, making sure that you are fully competitive from the business side. You don't have to worry about the technology. Can it support you? Because yes, of course it can. Another beautiful part of working with managed instance and the cloud, Azure Cloud, is that you have financially backed SLAs. So you don't have to really worry about downtimes. You don't have to worry about what happens if there is a flood in, or there is power outage, or whatever. There's natural things that happen. Machines default. All of these things are taken care of for you, and you just again have more time to spend on things that are critical and that matter, without actually having to worry about will my data propagate? Because yes, of course, you'll be able to access it 90+% of the time, which is awesome. Sorry, 99% of the time. And then on top of all of that, you get powerful analytics with through being able to integrate with other platform as service data services. Power BI being one that we all happily know and use, but then there's a whole other suite of products that you could be plugging in to help you um, have better insights into your own data and your own company, so that you can make decisions better. Now let's look at the DB Admin Manager. Um, I think the biggest point that why you like this, why managed instance empowers you and how it empowers you, is that you can focus on interesting projects. You're not a hardware person anymore. um, you don't have to be the bureaucrat who has to write up a request for fiber channels to be laid, or to buy more servers because XYZ is at 80% you don't feel comfortable, because the utilization, you don't have enough space to handle spikes in business. You can focus on designing applications securely. And what's most important is you can be the you can use um, your time, your brain energy, and your intelligence to tune the app and keep the costs intact, because you are valuable because you have so much experience in making sure the apps are working. However, now you can utilize that knowledge without the bureaucratic burden, but um, without having to worry about, oh, am I going to increase the cost, and do I need to buy more machines to make sure that this workloads, and what am I going to do with them afterwards? You don't have to do that anymore. You can provision, try, release when you're at the end of the day, when your test is done. And then we come to obviously DB admins, and this is where I think we have a lot of features that make your life easier. Um, the platform manages the updates for you, which again we know it takes time. You have planned downtime, you have to notify everybody. It just becomes again a whole burden of doing stuff around updates versus just knowing when that happens, setting the maintenance window and be like, okay, this is where when you do all the updates, everybody knows that it's always at the same scheduled time, and it just works. Um, Another very big and important thing is that you have an automated incident resolution. So, because artificial intelligence has gotten so better, um, bots can now handle 70% of incidents. So no one will bother you to reset the database. Is it working? Can you, restart it? What happens when blah? There's a lot of this overhead of small tasks that occupy your day, such that you can't focus on the bigger picture, rather than being able to do your job without having to deal with all of this, minor details. And then another important thing is that platform, because it's a platform, offers automated patching and versioning, or version upgrading. So it becomes another of those tasks that you needed to do before, and now you can just watch it get done. And if people ask you to provision a resource, you can go and do it in a couple of clicks, give them the connection string, and not have to worry about any of these things. That brings us to conclusion. And SQL Managed Instance is an intelligent, scalable cloud database service. You realize the potential of the clouds in and where it lies, what perks it brings you. And we have married basically SQL databases with the clouds, such that we talked about flexibility quite a bit, that you can focus doing your jobs without having to actually worry about minor details, where you can allocate the time where it's actually needed, versus having to do all of this, menial tasks that none of us actually enjoys it. The beautiful part about flexibility and about managed instances is you can start migrations quite easily. It's made to migrate your workloads from on-prem to the cloud. Because you have a fully managed SQL service with almost 100% compatibility with the latest SQL server, that means that most of your workloads can be on the cloud, and you can be utilizing all of this perks that a flexible cloud brings and SQL Managed Instance brings. This, brings us obviously to the end, where I want to thank you all for the attention, and Yeah, I hope to see you in the cloud.